Hello, so I thought I would do a video about Donald J. Trump and his tweet about Bitcoin, which the first part of which goes as follows. I am not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies which are not money and whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air. Unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior, including drug trade and other illegal activity. So what annoyed me about that was that it's so obviously contradictory in itself. It's not just that um, the statements have no validity or proof behind them. It's just a statement of prejudice. It's that the statement itself is inherently contradictory. First of all, it's saying that Bitcoin is responsible for drug trafficking, at least in part. But it's also saying that it's not, and that the dollar is uh, the only valid currency. Well, if it's the only valid currency, it must be the only valid currency for drug trafficking as well. Very annoying. Anyway, I thought I would go into some of the extent to which the dollar is used in drug trafficking, and that's what this video is about. So in 2018, the US Department of Justice and the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, you'll know who they are if you've ever watched Breaking Bad, produced this report, the 2018 National Drug Threat Assessment. It's a 164-page document available free to view online in PDF format. I am going straight to the section at the end described as illicit finance. They continue. The cash-intensive nature of drug distribution requires that all criminal groups involved overcome a series of obstacles to successfully launder and expend illicit profits. The main money laundering vulnerabilities in the United States are in the cash, banking, MSB, casino, and security sectors, and include the use of cash and monetary instruments in amounts under regulatory record-keeping and reporting thresholds, opening bank and brokerage accounts using nominees to disguise the identity of the individuals who control the accounts, creating legal entities without accurate information about the identity of the beneficial owner, misuse of products and services resulting from deficient compliance with anti-money laundering obligations, unwitting facilitation of illegal activity by merchants and financial institutions, movement and placement of funds through banks, licensed MSBs, unlicensed money transmitters, and cash smuggling. And finally, evolving threats from cybercrime, identity theft, and new payment systems. New payment systems, that's Bitcoin, right at the bottom there. Preferred methods to move and launder illicit proceeds, bulk cash smuggling, money value transfer systems, and trade-based money laundering have largely remained the same throughout the years. In recent years, money laundering through virtual currencies such as Bitcoin has become more prominent. So it's worth going briefly into what is money laundering. This is the International Compliance Association, and they deal with money laundering. They um, offer careers in money laundering. So what is money laundering? Money laundering is the generic term used to describe the process by which criminals disguise the original ownership and control of the proceeds of criminal conduct by making such proceeds appear to have derived from a legitimate source. How is the offence of money laundering committed? Money laundering offences have the same characteristics globally. There are two elements to a money laundering offence. One, the necessary act of laundering itself, i.e. the provision of financial services. Two, the requisite degree of knowledge or suspicion, either subjective or objective, relating to the source of the funds or the conduct of a client. The act of money laundering is committed in circumstances where a person is engaged in an arrangement, i.e. by providing a service or product, and that arrangement involves the proceeds of crime. These arrangements include a wide variety of business relationships, e.g. banking, fiduciary, and investment management. The requisite degree of knowledge or suspicion will depend upon the specific offence, but will usually be present where the person providing the arrangement, service, or product knows, suspects, or has reasonable grounds to suspect that the property involved in the arrangement represents the proceeds of crime. In some cases, the offence may also be committed where a person knows or suspects that the person with whom he or she is dealing is engaged in or has benefited from criminal conduct. Are all crimes capable of predicating money laundering? Different jurisdictions define crime predicating the offence of money laundering in different ways. Generally, the differences between definitions may be summarized as follows. Differences in the degree of severity of crime regarded as sufficient to predicate an offence of money laundering. For example, in some jurisdictions it is defined as being any crime that will be punishable by 1 or more years imprisonment. In other jurisdictions, the necessary punishment may be 3 or 5 years imprisonment. Differences in the requirements for the crime to be recognized both in the country where it took place and by the laws of the jurisdiction where the laundering activity takes place, or simply a requirement for the conduct to be regarded as a crime in the country where the laundering activity takes place, irrespective of how that conduct is treated in the country where it took place. In practice, almost all serious crimes, including drug trafficking, terrorism, fraud, robbery, prostitution, illegal gambling, arms trafficking, bribery, and corruption, are capable of predicating money laundering offences in most jurisdictions. Why is money laundering illegal? The objective of the criminalisation of money laundering is to take the profits out of crime. The rationale for the creation of the offence is that it is wrong for individuals and organisations to assist criminals to benefit from the proceeds of their criminal activity or to facilitate the commission of such crimes by providing financial services to them. How is money laundered? The processes are extensive. Generally speaking, money is laundered wherever a person or business deals in any way with another person's benefit from crime. That can occur in a countless number of diverse ways. Traditionally, money laundering has been described as a process which takes place in 3 distinct stages. Placement, the stage at which criminally derived funds are introduced into the financial system. Layering, the substantive stage of the process in which the property is, in inverted commas, washed and its ownership and source is disguised. And integration, the final stage at which the laundered property is reintroduced into the legitimate economy. This 3-staged definition of money laundering is highly simplistic. The reality is that the so-called stages often overlap in some cases. For example, cases of financial crimes, there is no requirement for the proceeds of crime to be placed. So that's a general background on money laundering. Let's look at bulk cash smuggling. No need for Bitcoin there. In 27, US law enforcement officials reported over 2,200 bulk cash seizure events totaling more than 193 million USD, according to the NSS. This is a 56% decrease from the previous year's 437.9 million USD in reported bulk cash seizures. The majority of bulk currency is moved from Northern California to Southern California and eventually transported across the border into Mexico using privately owned vehicles, as well as commercial tractor trailers. Large amounts of cash continue to be interdicted along major highway corridors, with the cash typically concealed in hidden vehicle compartments or among legitimate cargo. Los Angeles remains a haven for drug trafficking organizations to launder their proceeds due to the numerous banks, businesses, and ties to Mexico, and check cashing centers present in the area. So taking a look at bulk cash seizures, the general trend is downwards. From 2012 to 2017, the largest cash seizures have been steadily declining, and nationwide bulk cash seizures likewise, 2010 to 2017. Back to money laundering. Mexican TCOs, that is transnational criminal organizations, are increasingly utilizing US-based Asian money laundering organizations to facilitate drug money laundering. The use of Asian money broker simplifies the money laundering process and streamlines the purchase of precursor chemicals and paraphernalia utilized in manufacturing drugs for street sales, meaning they buy those products from China. Federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial agencies routinely recover billions of dollars of illicit proceeds annually, a portion of which is attributable to TCOs. Okay, so now we get in this report to virtual currency, which is kind of a waffly section. It does mention BTCE, which was a cryptocurrency exchange for cyber criminals worldwide, and was one of the principal entities used to launder and liquidate criminal proceeds from virtual currency to fiat currency, according to DOJ Financial Crimes Enforcement Network information. It goes on to say the most prominent issue vendors face from amassing Bitcoin or other virtual currencies from darknet marketplaces is converting the illicit funds into fiat currency. For criminals, Bitcoin is a vehicle used to transfer funds and is not primarily considered to be of monetary value. So they don't hang on to it, they just use it to transport value transnationally. We move now to Fortune magazine. Bitcoin accounts for 95% of cryptocurrency crime, says analyst. There's a video to accompany this, which I'll link to. Chainalysis, makers of software that helps cryptocurrency firms and law enforcement trace the public ledger of transactions recorded in 10 different blockchains. That number includes 4 new cryptocurrencies. Chainalysis added on Wednesday, including dollar-backed stablecoins such as Tether, Gemini Dollar, and USD Coin, as well as Binance Coin. Still, Bitcoin, which is currently trading at just under 5,500 USD, accounts for 95% of cryptocurrency cases law enforcement investigates, according to Levin. Now, it has to be said, this is not a brand new article, as you can tell by the Bitcoin price. It is, in fact, dated April 24th, 2019. So just to continue with Chainalysis's credentials, Europol and Chainalysis reinforce their cooperation in the fight against cybercrime. Europol's European Cybercrime Centre and Chainalysis, a technical services provider able to spot connections between digital identities, have concluded a memorandum of understanding together, meaning they're cooperating. So the headline is pretty much enough for this. Drug dealers who relied on Bitcoin's anonymity get 30 years behind bars. Members of a Bitcoin-fueled drug ring that used the dark web to import crystal meth into the UK have been sentenced to more than 30 years behind bars. And that is due to the ability to track transactions on the blockchain of Bitcoin. And that's exactly what Chainalysis is doing. So this is a report from The Verge. Golden age of dark web drug markets is over. And this refers to a recent case which came to a close on, well, the article is dated February 17th. It refers to a certain Christopher Banti or Bantil, sold to a string of undercover DEA agents through 2015 and 2016, and was indicted under seal as early as September 2016. But he wasn't arrested until January 2019, when federal agents were able to extradite him from the US for the recent plea. Those cases are growing more common across the board. Even before the takedown, drug enforcement agents were able to take down individual vendors through targeted buys. That technique only grew more effective as the sketchier Bitcoin exchanges got shut down and agencies were able to prop up phony money laundering operations in their place. Those cases are growing more common across the board. Even before the takedown, drug enforcement agents were able to take down vendors through targeted buys. That technique only grew more effective as the sketchier exchanges got shut down and agencies were able to prop up phony money laundering operations in their place, generating even more leads. By now, the playbook for taking down dark web drug dealers is pretty well established. A money laundering sting in June implicated 35 different vendors, but similar cases have trickled in at a regular clip. A month after Alphabay was taken down, an alleged cocaine vendor was arrested in the Central Valley of California. 10 days later, 6 more were indicted in the same district. 2 Brooklyn-based heroin dealers were sentenced that January In March, a Stockton man was sentenced to 8 years for buying unlicensed firearms through the market. The vendor arrests have gone on and on and on, long after the markets themselves have closed up. But after a seemingly endless stream of vendor arrests, that model is less convincing. Instead of a new paradigm, dark web marketplaces now look more like a brief window where marketplace technology was outpaced law enforcement's ability to track it. But now law enforcement has caught up, and judging the rate of indictments, they're making up for lost time. In another article from Brave New Coin, reports darknet transactions up 70% with BTC still the currency of choice. In fact, the value transacted in Bitcoin on darknet markets increased 70% in 2018. This is revealed in a Chainalysis report that promises to decode the role of cryptocurrency in hacks, scams, and darknet markets. Rising awareness as criminals, terrorists, and sanctioned nations wake up to the possibility offered by cryptocurrency. The increased media attention and prices of cryptocurrency has attracted global cybercrime communities. And moving over to the Chainalysis blog, Crypto Crime, Decoding Darknet Markets, the whack-a-mole problem with darknet markets. As the chart below shows, volumes going to identified darknet marketplaces peaked in 2017, hitting nearly 700 million USD. Darknet market activity fell by 60% after Alphabet closed in mid-2017, but the slowdown was short-lived. And here we have the graph. Closing one darknet market often leads to people to use other platforms. Said Chainalysis, not very surprisingly. So if you're wondering how Bitcoin is laundered, here's an article from Hardfork TNW. From 2018. Since 2009, estimates suggest criminals have used hyper-connected cryptocurrency ecosystems to launder well over $2.5 billion worth of dirty Bitcoin. Now let's bring that into perspective. Since 2009, so that's 10 years, $2.5 billion. I wonder how much USD has been laundered since then. Anyway, it goes on. Contrary to popular opinion, it's actually quite easy to link Bitcoin transactions together in order to identify you. This should be obvious considering public blockchains are totally transparent and browsable by anyone. Still, dumb criminals are constantly caught for using Bitcoin in illicit activities. This is because Bitcoin is not anonymous. In fact, there are barely any cryptocurrencies on today's market that are capable of masking identities when sending, receiving, and spending cryptocurrency. Now, I have to say, that is not correct. There are a number of zero-knowledge cryptocurrencies that are very effective at that. Bitcoin mixers, also known as tumblers, reportedly clean dirty cryptocurrency by bouncing it between various addresses before recombining the full amount through a Bitcoin wallet hosted on the dark web. Even the most well-known and established exchanges, mixing services, have serious security and privacy limitations, highlighting the danger of using such a service for criminal activities. Bitcoin is easily laundered through unregulated exchanges. Unregulated cryptocurrency exchanges, those without know your customer and anti-money laundering procedures such as identity checks, can be used to clean Bitcoin even without using a cryptocurrency mixing service beforehand. Each time a trader exchanges one cryptocurrency for another, they are adding degrees of privacy similar to hopping between wallet addresses. Although how effective this is depends heavily on the exchange's monitoring technology, so this might not be a totally airtight solution. Inevitably, money launderers turn to shady peer-to-peer markets and other nefarious deeds to turn their Bitcoin into cash. Still, a few months back, researchers found unregulated cryptocurrency exchanges receive an overwhelming majority of the internet's dirty Bitcoin. Even worse, the exchanges in countries where there is little to no AML regulations actually receive 36 times more Bitcoin from money launderers than those with appropriate rules in place. Researchers estimate that after Bitcoin has been cleaned on exchanges, 97% of it ends up in countries with extremely lax KYC/AML regulations. So where does that leave us? Um, I think that the amount of cryptocurrency currently being used in um, illegal activities, um, it's unknown. It's because the privacy coins often don't have that data available. They're not trackable on chain. Um, so I don't know how you would establish the extent to which they're being used for any purpose. Um, I think it's well established that the amount of US dollars being used can be gauged more or less from the amount seized, and that's not going away. However, the steady decline in seizures suggests either those criminals are using alternative means or they're better at smuggling cash and doing money laundering. And it has to be said, who benefits? The US government would not benefit from any seizures if all trading was done in cryptocurrency, especially privacy cryptocurrency. Whereas at the moment, they're getting windfalls here, there, and everywhere in cash, in USD. Just saying. And that is not to mention the uh, banking institutions which are actively engaged in money laundering, as evidenced recently by the Deutsche Bank scandals. Deutsche Bank was raided in Frankfurt by 170 police for 2 days in November. And they did that because of money laundering. They collected 900 names and addresses of their clients who were engaged in money laundering and were being facilitated in money laundering by Deutsche Bank, allegedly. So the extent of the money laundering that is being engaged in by legitimate or so-called legitimate financial institutions is unknown. even the amount seized under uh, by authorities and processed by authorities can't necessarily give you a accurate picture, because who knows what uh, strategies they're using. They may simply be getting better at it, getting better at not getting caught. And that's where I will leave it, I think. However, I will revisit the final tweet on the subject by the Donald. We have only one real currency in the USA, and it is stronger than ever, both dependable and reliable. It is by far the most dominant currency anywhere in the world, and it will always stay that way. It is called the United States dollar. Makes you want to stand up and applaud, doesn't it? And I dare say criminals around the world are doing exactly that.